So I'll start out talking about how the structure of the work is with Spanish work in the South Dakota Rapid City Mission. There's not very much of it, and so there's relatively few missionaries that Spanish called missionaries in the mission because there's just not a huge demand for it. When I got there, I came in with 2 other Spanish-speaking missionaries, and there were a total of 2 trainers for them. So my trainer was actually an English-speaking missionary because they just didn't have enough trainers for us. So Casper, Wyoming is a big Spanish area, and they actually have a branch there. It just started in February of this year, 2014. And I've been told, I haven't been able to check it out, but I've been told it's booming. It's almost big enough for a ward already. And then you've got Gillette, Wyoming. It's about 2 hours northeast of Casper. And there's some Spanish population there. I never served there. But that area has been off and on. It's been, I think it got closed twice while I was on my mission and reopened. So I don't really know what the deal is there. They've got a little group that's attached to a ward that meets, but it's got like 5-10 people on a good day. So the Spanish work there in Gillette's really difficult, I've been told, really slow. And then Worthington, Minnesota is the next big place for Spanish. I said earlier that it's mostly Guatemalan, and that's definitely true. I'd say at least half or more are Guatemalan. They call them Chapinos or Chapines, and that's kind of like the slang word for them. And then the rest of them are mostly at least still from Central America, and you got some Mexicans and some people from South America, but it's mostly Central America there in Worthington. Williston, North Dakota has a pretty good Spanish population as well, and I was sent there in Williston to try to open up the Spanish work there because there is a population there. The trouble is it's really hard to find them because they all work in the oil field, and so they all work these random hours, but there's a lot of them there, and there's a lot of potential there for Spanish work. And so the way it works, the way my mission president, President Anderson, did it is you'd usually be in a Spanish area, but it's usually cover an English area as well. So you'd be assigned to an English area, and then you'd do Spanish work in that whole city, or if there's 2 sets of Spanish missionaries in half of the city. And then usually you'll end up in an English area to try to open up Spanish work or to see if there's Spanish work to be done. And you'll serve with a Spanish companion, but you'll definitely be serving with some English companions too. And that's just the way President Anderson did it, which is fine. You can still study on your own, you can still learn it, and it works out, and you can still preach the gospel in Spanish. And members are really helpful to try to help you practice if you ask them. And so some things that we did to help find Spanish-speaking or Spanish people is soccer. Hispanics love soccer. It's everything to them. So what we would do is we would set up a time and say, hey, we're going to play soccer. Invite your friends. And it worked out. When I did it, we only did it a couple of times, but the companion I did it with in a previous area, he did it in Casper, and they found tons and tons of people to teach through that because they'd invite one of their Hispanic members to come play and say, hey, invite your friends. And they're like, oh yeah, I've got this friend, I've got this friend, I've got this friend, and they all come and play soccer, and it's just super fun, it's super relaxed, it's non-threatening, and then you usually play in your shirt and tie, and they're like, oh, well, why are you all dressed up? And you're like, oh, well, it's because I'm a missionary, I tell people about Jesus Christ, and they're like, oh, I love Jesus Christ, let's talk about him. Hispanics are very religious people, or at least spiritual. A lot of them aren't very religious, but they are spiritual, and they love to learn about Christ. And so they're very, very open to hearing what you have to teach them. The culture, though, is very laid back and very non-committal, and so it's very difficult to get them to progress. They usually don't progress very quickly. I'm trying to think of an example. Usually when you're talking with an American, due to our culture, once they commit, once you actually get them committed to baptism and they're actually excited about it, they really progress really quickly. And it's usually within a month that they get baptized. It's different with Hispanics. With Hispanics, if they're really in their Hispanic culture and not Americanized, then they'll be interested and they'll keep inviting you back, but it may be 6 months or more before they get baptized, even after committing. And you'll usually have to put them on date and then push back the date and then maybe push it back again. But eventually they get there, and it's really great. The Hispanics, I think, are really great member missionaries. They, as a whole, I think, are more missionary-minded than American people are. Just because of their culture, they're just much more outgoing, much more friendly, fewer walls, lower walls. And so it's easier to get them to share the gospel with their friends and then to invite them to take the lessons. I mentioned that the Spanish branch in Casper is booming, and it's because of that. They have all these so solid members of the church that are Hispanic, and they say, oh, well, I've got this friend, this friend, this friend, this friend, and they take them all to church. I was in Casper for a time, and we were starting to get the branch ready to go. I was at least able to work on that. And one of the ladies we were working with said, hey, I have 47 referrals for you, but I will not give them to you until the branch is set up, until there's a place for them to come to church. And there's this other guy, he owns a construction company, and I think he's the branch president, actually. Yeah, he's the branch president. He owns a construction company in Casper. And one time the missionaries were calling around, and they talked to him, and he said, oh, you know what? I'm going to invite all of my workers to church. He had a trailer that they lived in. There was like 15 of them. And he just walks into the living room and says, hey, let's go to church. And they're like, okay. And they all came to church. And I don't know what happened to them. I wasn't there for that story, but they're just very missionary minded. They're so excited to share the gospel. They're so excited to talk about Christ. And it's the best thing ever. I love Hispanics so much because of that, because of their kindness. They're definitely much kinder than Americans as a whole. And so Hispanics are wonderful people. And that's about how the Spanish work goes in the Rapid City Mission.